Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hangin' with Web Show. I'm GW Pomichter, your host, and you are hanging out here at the Indie Bookfest 2019, Orlando, Florida, and we're here with author Scott A. Meehan, the author of 21st Century Pulp and Other in Sundry. It's been 4 years, Scott, since we talked last.
It has been, yes.
And you've been busy. You've been writing?
Yeah, quite a bit. I think since the last time we talked 4 years ago, I've released probably 3 or 4 more books.
Yeah?
At least. The 21st Century Pulp is one I'm working on currently.
Okay.
And in 2020, I got 3 projects ongoing that are about to start. So
fantastic.
I'm trying to stay busy.
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing that you want to do is send an old grunt home, because you know what he's going to do. Anything he can do to stay busy. That's true. And Scott's going to kick out books. And that's 21st Century Pulp. This is a concept art that you haven't finished this yet. You're working on it.
That's correct. What that is, it's going to be an anthology.
Okay.
And I'm still receiving short stories and poetry from a variety of people.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with the history of pulps.
Yes.
The pulps, yeah.
Those were, by the way, there's old. Indeed, well, between the 40s and the 60s. One of the cheapest way to make quick and easy stuff was to take the shavings from paper pulp.
Correct.
And make additional paper out of it.
Yep.
And it was cheap to print on, and it was cheap to do. And so you had the pulp novels out of them. Pulp comics.
Yep.
Came out of that. So
you're right on. In fact, that's how a lot of authors got their start. The ones that weren't famous or big. So that's the concept here with 21st Century. We're all indie authors, and so we're trying. I'm just trying to get some people's voices out there, and so I'm receiving poetry, short stories, and I'm going to put it together, the anthology. There's even going to be a chapter, an international chapter, where they'll submit. So far I've received Arabic and Vietnamese, but I'll take any other language that I can to put in that international chapter.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, just for the diversity and the globalism of this world that we live in today. So.
It really, and I think we talked about this the first time you sat in the chair, and that is that technology and has shrunk the world down. And
yes.
it is, as much as we like to complain about some of it, it has really given opportunity to creative artists.
It sure has.
And that's the perfect title for it, because in those early days, if you weren't Stan Lee and you weren't working over at Marvel and you didn't have fresh pages, you had to go to the pulp printer and get whatever was laying on the floor and start printing your stuff on it. And today, indie authors have found a new voice in the internet.
That's correct.
Programs like Drafted Digital, who's here at the conference this weekend, of course KDP and Amazon, who is, because Jeff Bezos needs a shout out, really, because he's the largest retail company on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
He's probably on Mars already, let's face it. He's probably selling something to the Martians. But you know, those are platforms that have given us voice in a way we never had it before. And you know, when you and I were young, it was stack of rejection letters.
Oh yeah.
And then you always kept
still is.
the one that accepted you, you kept that right here, right where you could read it over and over again, right? Yeah. So, Scott, you had about 4 or 5 books out since the last time we talked. So what's the latest book?
Let's see. The last one that's come out as a novel is Millennial Girl. I'll have that this weekend, tomorrow. There was a sequel after that, but it was kind of it could be read as a standalone because it's more of a fantasy. I took the star from Millennial Girl and kind of put her in a fantasy world, so you could use it as a part 1, part 2, or a standalone. But the one with the fantasy is more of a short story, maybe a novella. Yeah, it's not something along those lines.
Fantastic. Now, how many books is that for you total now?
Well, not counting revisions and different
editions.
Different editions and those kind of things.
Even without the Big Ten publishers, one of the beautiful things about being indie is that you can go back in
and fix some things.
And even when your small press contracts are over with, you can go back in and fix them up and tweak them and do some things that you meant to do back in the day.
That's correct.
And so we too get second and third editions sometimes.
Yeah, so I have a total of 6 out, one of them being co-authored, and then only one's nonfiction. That's my autobiography, Stoned in a Sling. And I have 3 lined up for 2020. 2 of the 3 are mysteries, and the third one is historical fiction.
Oh, wow, fantastic. Busy man.
You gotta be.
There you go, there you go. So Sage wants to know back there behind the camera, your historical fiction, what period are you writing in?
French and Indian War. It's about an Indian girl, a scout. She's 17, and she's a scout for George Washington's army, not during the Revolutionary War, but when he was a major and a colonel in the French and Indian War.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool, by the way. It's an underwritten about period in American history.
Yes, it is.
It really is.
But it was a very significant start. Even prior
it was because the French and Indian War shaped
Yep.
the men and women who would become our founders.
That's correct.
That
Before
was
the Revolutionary War.
experiencing the French and Indian War, and seeing the distinctions between. George Washington is a great example.
Yep.
As an officer in the British militia,
Yeah.
he got to see he was treated very distinctly different than his peers. And had he been accepted by his peers,
Yeah.
we might be telling a different story about the founding of our nation.
Sure, and that's what a lot of folks don't understand too about the George Washington and those who fought for the colonists. They were actually fighting with the British against the French at first.
Yeah.
So they're in the Revolutionary War. They're fighting the enemy that they used to be part of.
Yeah, it is.
Allies,
George Washington is a great example because I love learning about George Washington's life and learning about that period in time. Okay, hold on. No, don't go. Double A's. Keep rolling.
You have to do all the editing afterwards, or
Yes. Which is not my favorite thing to do.
yeah. Well, the unique thing about this is people that submit their short stories and poetry cost them nothing. I'll read it. If I like it, they get in there. I'll put their name on the front cover with a bunch of other names. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I should be back. All right. Now, yeah, in that period, I love to read about George Washington and him coming up because it's a great example of those guys and those officers.
Yeah.
Because as militiamen, as colonials, their experience fighting the French and Indian War was a very different one from a British officer or from a British soldier in some cases. And so it shaped their worldview at that time.
Did. And their type of warfare, yes.
Yeah. And so, by the time we get to the Revolution, and we were all, you and I are Army grunts, so we're all versed in the folklore of our nation.
Yeah.
But the reality sometimes is much deeper than that.
Yeah.
And so no taxation without representation. These are all things we grew up hearing, but really it comes down to Daddy treats us differently. We are the stepchildren, and that leaves resentment.
Yeah.
And those guys felt that. And when you look back at the French and Indian War, you can see it.
Yeah.
Up close. These guys fight
true.
differently.
Yep.
They are shunned to the side a lot of the times, and Washington was definitely worthy of promotion after the French and Indian War, and he got one, just not in that army.
From major to lieutenant colonel under General Braddock.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was a different world for them, and so by the time we get to our revolution, they've been shaped by those events.
Exactly. And those wars, the French and Indian, the Revolutionary, even the Civil War, has so much of lessons we could learn about what's going on today in our society. Not so much with guns and weapons as of yet, anyways, but just the difference in one side and another, and how they're, leading towards a clash, just like back in those days.
You know, what's that? The old adage, you know, that if you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. Sadly, sometimes if you do learn history, you still are doomed to repeat it because you don't learn from it.
Exactly.
You learn names and dates and facts and figures, but instead of learning the lessons. And our Civil War, our Revolution, these all taught us lessons about how we treat one another and how we act as a society, especially when you are, you know, 50, 48 contiguous and 2, you know, additional states, all individual geographies and locations and climates and people. There are natural barriers already in your life. You don't need any unnatural ones.
Yep.
But we tend to create them anyway, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
You know, we do. So, so Scott, you got you and off camera real quick. We were talking about 20th century pulps. Opportunities for authors. They send the work in, and you just kind of review it. And
and it costs them nothing. If I take their works and put it in there, then their names will be on the cover as well, along with many others, just like the old pulp books, and they got all those lists of names.
All the lists of, I remember those. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We have been hanging out with Scott A. Meehan here at the Indie Bookfest 2019. We've been talking about 20th century pulp, his books, his work, the indie movement. We've been talking about a lot of different things, so just go back and watch the episode again, like 4 times. Watch it at least 4 times. And while we have to wrap it up, so we're going to say thank you to our partners and friends, our friends at Famous Faces and Funny, Space Coast Comics, Indie Originals, our great friend Josh Bauer at J. Bauer Art for all the artwork that adorns our set here. And we thank Scott for bringing his 20th century pulp poster with him. Thank you to Foxwood Wine Company, because these chairs are really comfy and they make you want to have a glass of wine. They're just kind of, you know, I don't know. And our great friends at Hearts Helping Others of Central Florida, B and the crew over there are helping families all over Central Florida. We thank them for what they do. And our friend Gene Turnbow and his crew at Krypton Radio. We are at Indie Bookfest 2019. I'm GW Pomichter. We've been hanging with Scott Meehan. Check the links down below. Remember, log on, tune in, and see who we're hanging with next.
Thank
Scott,
you very much.
Thank you. Awesome.
All right, appreciate it.